Welcome to the Long Live the Legion podcast. My name's Jay, and I'm one of your hosts.
And this is Jim, and I'm your other host.
All right. I hope everybody's having a great day, and we're ready to talk Legion. Today, we're doing a special focus on one of the most important members of the Legion of Superheroes, Saturn Girl. What we wanted to start off with, we're going to give a brief explanation of who Saturn Girl is, her name, where she's from, everything else. So, one of the funniest things I find about Saturn Girl is her name is Imra Ardeen, and I don't know, Jim, if you have the same problem, but Spellcheck hates her name.
Oh, Spellcheck hates most of the Legionnaires' names. Are you kidding me? It's horrible. It has to be, this is the fun thing about the Legion. You all have all these future names. It's great.
Yeah, it's I still to this day think it was a typo back in 1958. I think it was supposed to be Irma, and they screwed it up. But I love it. I love the fact that it's just a simple switch of letters. So Imra Ardeen, she is from the moon Titan, which is a moon of Saturn. And that's why she's called Saturn Girl. I mean, I don't know why she wasn't called Titan Girl, which would kind of make more sense, but she is. And her powers are telepathy.
Absolutely, telepathy, and it's one of those things where again we have to come in and reframe a little bit of the discussion for new Legion readers and listeners, right? Where every Legionnaire in the team has one specific power, right? There's one thing that they're specializing in, and that's why they're on the team. And in Saturn Girl's case, it is telepathy, an extremely powerful telepath at that.
And so she comes in. It's 1958. So she is predating Marvel Girl. She is predating Invisible Woman. She is, I think she is the first big powered telepath because she's predating Professor X as well, right?
I believe so, because the X-Men weren't until the 1960s, correct?
Exactly. So everything Marvel, I mean, aside from the characters from the 40s, it's 61 that I think they begin. So Saturn Girl, as far as I know, is the first telepath, is the first powerful telepath. I can't think of any Golden Age characters over that. Like, I mean, everybody was more a variant of either Captain America or like the Shadow, Batman kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So this was the first one where this is somebody reading minds. So she's a bit of a trailblazer as far as that goes. The other thing that I always like to say when we talk about Saturn Girl is, I know that everybody says that Cosmic Boy is the first member of the Legion of Superheroes because he was the first leader. I tend to think of Saturn Girl as the first member because she's the one who started everything. And what I mean by that is she's the one who, she's the one who read the minds of the criminals and got Cosmic Boy and Lightning Lad to actually react. So if she doesn't do anything, none of this happens. So I kind of view her as the catalyst.
Going, let's stop on that and let's talk about how she joined, right? Because what you're talking about is integral to kind of the backstory of not only her as a character, but the Legion as a whole.
Exactly. So please take it away.
So and this is the classic backstory, right? Like every other comic book hero or team has their classic origin story that gets told millions of times. But in the case of the Legion, kind of the go-to story that is consistent with most versions of the Legion across the last 50 and 60 years is that the three core Legionnaires, you have Saturn Girl, Imra Ardeen, who we're talking about here today, Lightning Lad, Garth Rands, and Cosmic Boy, Rock Kryn, foil an assassination attempt on R.J. Brand, who is a wealthy industrialist. Now, the details of how this happens and the different roles that people play around that whole thing vary based on the era and the retcons and all that kind of stuff. But at its core, Jay, just what you said, where Saturn Girl reads the intent of the assassins, and then Rock and Garth go and actually take them down, is pretty much the core story of what happens and is the core of what happens with the Legion, because R.J. Brand then decides, hey, this is a really cool thing. Kids from different backgrounds working together to save the day. I want to make something of this, and then he's the one who sponsors the Legion. Although the whole tale of the sponsorship and all that kind of stuff we don't hear until many years into the Legion storytelling. But that is the generally considered the foundation of the origin story of the Legion.
Perfect. Yes. Thanks for slowing me down. I tend to get 5 steps ahead of this because I get so excited. I'm like, we got to talk about this. So that's a great explanation. And this is one of those for anybody who's a new Legion fan. When you think of sort of like the 3 or 4 keystone Legion stories that have to exist, like this is one of them. So the idea of these 3 coming together, saving RJ Brand, this is where everything begins. And again, and one of the reasons why I elevate her to this is because her role of this, whether and again, it doesn't matter whether the reboot with the reboot, like she could just be a regular teenager, she could be somebody who's joined the science police, which is the big police force in the 31st century. She's the one taking charge, kind of right from the beginning, which is why I always find it funny that Cosmic Boy always ends up being the first leader when she kind of showed she was the better leader from the beginning, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the whole Cosmic Boy being the first leader, quote unquote, I think is just more of a, well, this is the history of it. This is the myth, right? And we have to talk to the story of the myth. But I think the thing that really needs to be driven home about Saturn Girl and why she's so important, in addition to being a founding member of the Legion, is that, and this is I think where you're getting to, is that she is the first female leader of the team after Cosmic Boy. And not only that, but she's one of the first female leaders of any super team. There's not that many, and I am probably not the right person that goes through from a comics history perspective. There's plenty more people that are smarter on this than I am. But and this is, we're talking about the late 1950s and the early 1960s, is a female leader of a super team. That's kind of unique. There's not that many people that fall into that role.
I'm going to go even stronger. That's not kind of unique. That is stunningly unique, especially. So I'm not going to claim I'm a history expert in any stretch. I did a little bit of research. So she became the first female team leader, I believe, in 1963. And so 1963, this is the time when most female characters in comic books are the damsels in distress. They're the ones like, we don't know what to do if the guys don't help us. This is the time when Lois Lane solely exists as, hey, how can I trick Superman to marrying me? And she's elected to be the team leader. And even more so, the story where she gets elected to be team leader, she becomes team leader by actually taking over the minds of her teammates to make them vote for her, because she knows that the next leader is going to die. So she's sacrificing herself to save a team member. It ends up not working because Lightning Lad is the one who puts himself into danger. And that becomes actually another gigantic moment in Legion history when they kill Lightning Lad, again, in 1963, which, and heroes were not dying at this point in time. So she's not only showing that she's a leader, that she's willing to do whatever it takes to save her teammates, but she's also willing to sacrifice herself for a team member. All of these things you just did not see, especially with female characters in the early 1960s.
Yep, that's exactly right. And in fact, I'll probably say the way I'm going to put what I was saying before is that, according to my research, with everything that I've seen, Saturn Girl is the first leader of a super team in the comic book world. But like I said, if somebody has a different take on that or has more information, please feel free to let us know. We are happy to learn more about that. But either way you either way you talk about this, early 1960s comic books, especially a comic book that has a female or has a team of kids of all kinds of different backgrounds, having a female person in charge is kind of unheard of. It's just amazing.
And then they actually went like 5 steps further with that. Like, it's really funny. When you're reading Silver Age comics and when you're reading the Silver Age Legion, there's a lot of, it's the nice way of saying this, insanity. And there's a lot of moments that just make you scratch your head and go like, whoa, what? Like one thing that always sticks out that, this is again, the 1960s. There's at least two or three issues where Brainiac 5 turns to the team and says, I don't want Saturn Girl to come because she's a girl and it's too dangerous. She needs to stay home. And at the same time, she's the leader of the team. She's the creator. Okay, I'm going to back up on this one. So when Mon-El first shows up, Mon-El is a superhero from Daxam, and he has a weakness to lead. So if he's exposed to lead, it's going to kill him. It's kind of like kryptonite for Superman. Saturn Girl's the one who invents the very first serum that cures this problem. So Mon-El can actually do stuff with the team. She's the scientist who makes this. Now this kind of disappeared and they made Brainiac 5 the sole inventor after a while, but again, like 1960s, they're writing her as this smart, capable hero. And there's no difference between her and Lightning Lad as far as the writers are handling her.
No, that's right. And I think it's also, and kind of going back to something that you said earlier, which I think is really important about the fundamental aspect of the character, is that she is one to, she takes her job very seriously. She will sacrifice herself for her team 100% all day long. And this is fairly true for almost every iteration of her character in some way, shape, or form. And to that point, I would say that you have these three initial characters. You have Lightning Lad, Cosmic Boy, and Saturn Girl. You have one way I was thinking about this earlier was that you have Lightning Lad, who we'll talk about these characters in much more detail in other episodes. But Lightning Lad, who's very much more of a little bit more of a hothead, and you have Cosmic Boy, Rock Kryn. He's rock, right? He's rock steady, right? He's very solid. And then you have Imra, who's kind of in between them and is kind of acts as a bit of a mediator to that. So as such, she's kind of I guess if we can call it id ego and super ego, right? She would be the super ego of the team, making sure that everything kind of stays in balance. And then not only does she handle that across the initial three core members, but she is also doing that. In my opinion, she does that across the team. And in some cases, like you see this in certain discussions, like when we talked about the Universo project last time, and there was that moment between her and Dream Girl where Dream Girl kind of intimates that Saturn Girl's a little bit stuffy, and we see other allusions to this from other characters like Phantom Girl. And partly because she's a telepath, right? So she's inundated with all this information all the time. Her being able to keep everything together is kind of a real sign of the strength of the character.
I agree. Yeah, it's I love the id, ego, superego, the thought. I always think of the three of them as like brain, heart, and soul, if that
Sure.
makes any sense. Like
Sure,
Lightning
absolutely.
Lad's the emotion, right? Cosmic Boy's the soul, and then she's the brain of the Legion. Like she's one of the smartest members. I will make the argument. I think she's the best leader of the team. I mean, I know like the era that I love the most, Element Lad is kind of the best leader, but I think she's always been that character. And she's the one who keeps everybody together. She's the one who sacrifices herself for the good of the team. And when her character really works, that's what we're seeing. It's I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure the team succeeds and that everybody's taken care of. And even if it hurts me, so be it.
It's funny when you mentioned the heart, soul, and mind of the Legion item. That was actually the first thing that I landed on from that perspective. And then I thought about it more. I have a bit of a psych background, so that was ultimately where the road led me. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, that you have those three core characters. And that's kind of you have this kind of trinity of a whole that is representative of the Legion as a whole, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. As soon as you mention Trinity, my brain immediately goes to the Trinity of DC Comics, right?
Right.
And I think you could say like Saturn Girl is the Batman of the Legion. Like if you're thinking, like I'd say, Batman's the thinker, and I mean, I don't know if it breaks apart as soon as we go to that. I'd say maybe Superman and Lightning Lad and Wonder Woman and Cosmic Boy. Does that work?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, it's different. Yeah, it's like one of the things like how they do that same thing with the Lord of the Rings characters, right? And so, nobody is an exact, parallel with anybody else. So, but yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Let me put it this way. If somebody wrote a story about a Legion member who had figured out how to defeat every other Legion member, it would be Saturn Girl. Who would have thought that? Like that's kind of the thing, right? It's very sort of Batman-y kind of way of
100%.
looking at it.
So let's talk about something else here because we're talking about a really strong character, and we can't talk about how she's a strong character without mentioning the fact that in the longest iteration that exists of her, she is a mom of twins. And if anybody, and we all have a mom, we all know how strong they are, and especially if are married and you have a wife who is given birth and you've witnessed it, you absolutely understand how strong women are. And not only is Imra Ardeen strong from a female woman perspective and a mother, and a strong partner with Lightning Lad because that's who she's married to eventually. She takes on Darkseid. She faces him down and says, "Give me my baby back." And can't say that about a lot of characters. That's kind of a unique thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's in my notes of one of her highlights, like one of the best moments. So I don't want to get into the whole huge confusion that went around her facing down Darkseid, but basically, yeah, like
Darkseid.
Darkseid. I always get stuck on that. I'm sorry. Like my Darkseid kidnaps one of her children, right? She has twins, but she thinks she only has one, and turns her child into one of the Legion's greatest villains named Validus. And when she realizes what's happened, doesn't hesitate for a second. Like, is all right, I'm getting my kid back. Let's go. Goes right up against the most dangerous foe that the Legion has ever faced and does it by herself. Like, there's a great moment where she's face to face with him going, give me my, yeah, like you said, give me my son back. And he does. She, she's a fighter, no matter what the situation. I mean, I always think it's funny when you're talking about like how strong she is as a mom, and there's those great moments where she's pregnant fighting people.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like that's impressive in and of itself.
Absolutely.
The other one, and I think mentioning her as the mom, sorry, the one other point I wanted to make is I believe, so we talked about this last episode when she comes back after she defeats Eclipso and she rejoins the team.
Universo.
Eclipso. Sorry, Universo.
That's a whole
Yeah,
other
no,
thing.
my brain. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Universo. So when she beats Universo, she rejoins the team. She goes to work, and her husband stays home with the two kids.
Yes.
And I'm fairly certain that's the first time in comics that the wife goes to work and the husband stays home.
100%.
Didn't seem strange at all. Like,
Yeah.
and this is 1987 when they,
Something like that.
like it's a big, as a comic reader, like you're like, wow. And the funny thing is it wasn't a wow. Like, looking back on it, you go, wow. And at the time you go, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, she's a mom, but she's also capable of doing all of this.
Oh yeah, totally. And I'm glad you mentioned that too. That's something that it popped for me too that I definitely wanted to make sure we covered because that's a huge deal, right? I mean, she came out of retirement and was the working spouse. I love it.
Well, it's kind of funny. Like, she came out of retirement twice. The first time, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, and stick with me. So the first time they left the team, so back in the early 70s, she and Lightning Lad get married, and at the time, one of the Legion rules was if you got married, you had to quit the team. And so the first couple to get married, it was Bouncing Boy and Duo Damsel, and I always thought that they married the two to kind of get rid of them. Like, I always felt that the writers at the time, and I think it was Carrie Bates, was like, I don't want to write some of these lesser powered Legionnaires. So he found ways to so he got rid of Duo Damsel, he got rid of Bouncing Boy, he killed off Invisible Kid. So he could bring in some more sort of 70s styles heroes. But when Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad got married, I don't think it was the same situation. I think it was the sign that the team was getting older. That was the first clue of like these are not teenagers anymore. And I think that was another part of Saturn Girl. Like we talked about her being a mom and having a kid. I think almost every moment of her development has always been a key to the Legion because it tells you this is where the Legion's going.
For sure. Although, so if we're going to be talking about the '70s Legion, we cannot have a discussion about Saturn Girl and not talk about the bikini outfit. Granted, this is well. Let me just put it this way: since we're in 2025, the '70s were a special time, right? And some superhero outfits now are kind of revealing and skimpy and all that kind of stuff, but they got nothing on the '70s Legion. Let me tell you something. Some of these kids were barely wearing any clothes and running around and fighting and saving the universe. And Saturn Girl was one of them because she was infamous for that pink bikini with high boots, which I remembered as a young child. So that's all I'm going to say about that topic.
Every time we bring this up, I always like to mention that bikini costume was actually created by a fan. So there's a really, really old issue, and I believe it's Dave Cockrum, who drew it.
Yes.
They had said to the fans, hey, come up with new costume ideas. And there's a 2 or 3 page spread of Cockrum, and I could be wrong, this could be Grell, but I'm pretty sure it's Cockrum, drawing all of these designs. And none of them lasted. Like they got the one picture and then they were done. But for some reason, this one stayed. And they said, "Yep, we're gonna take Saturn Girl and we're gonna use this costume." Now, I mean, I grew up with this costume as a kid. I remember watching. Well, that sounds horrible. I grew up reading Legion comics where she wore this costume, and I gotta be honest, like I never saw it as bad because, I mean, again, in the '70s and the '80s, like, yeah, she's dressed like that, and Shadow Lass is barely wearing anything, and Cosmic Boy has the craziest costume ever, which I don't even know how it stays up because it's basically just 2 pieces that cover his rib cage, and it just kind of fit the way the Legion was drawn at the time. Now, when Keith Giffen took over as the artist, the first thing he did was got rid of it and got her into a costume that made more sense and reflected more what she had worn in the '60s. But I find it interesting. Like she's one of the only Legionnaires you can say like a fan designed her costume, and it was the costume that lasted the longest, and it was 72 to 82. Like that's a decade.
Yeah, maybe. But all I have to say is thank you to that fan. That's all I have to say. So if hopefully if we can find out whoever that was. I'm not having to Google foo right now to be able to find that those pictures, but yes, we'll give that person.
It's Kay Haven Metzger. I actually wrote
Thank
this down because I knew we were going to talk about it. So
Thank you, Kay.
So thank you very much. So wherever you are, yeah, it was an. I mean, I know people who hate it. I loved the costume, and I think it did a great job humanizing her, making her fit the team a little bit more, and make her feel like she was part of the group. I mean, especially, I mean, like you said in the '70s, some of those costumes are just. I had a personal favorite. My personal favorite was Princess Projectra's, but that's another story for another episode.
And no shame there because I think that's a great second place, honestly. But so to the point about I guess the way that bikini uniform was so iconic. The funny thing is that you see hints of that down the line. So like you mentioned, right, they gave her back to a more, conservative costume, through the '80s basically. But then when we get into the later years of the post 0 hour time frames and the 3-boot especially, the 3-boot costume is very much an homage to that bikini costume. It's just kind of inverted using a full bodysuit from a design perspective. So it's just one of those things that is, it's you see that costume, you know exactly who that character is. You don't have to even, think about it.
Exactly. So I think the color choices are always good. I mean, aside from the very beginning when she was yellow and black, the pink and white, I think is just hers. I don't think there's a lot of characters who own pink and white to that level. I mean, you could say Element Lad, but she's kept that color palette over 50 years now, and I think it just works for her. And the bikini costume was part of it. Um, I got to be honest. I think my favorite Saturn Girl costume is probably what Jeff Moy did. Of all of them, I think it was the one that was the most. It felt the most superhero-ish, like the um, but again, like the looks always kind of stayed the same, and they always worked for her.
Yeah, the color scheme's always it. Yeah, and the that reboot post Zero Hour, they all had kind of a more defined uniform look, even though everybody had slightly individual styles. Everybody had kind of a uniform approach for the most part of how the uniforms look, because there's a whole thing about the science police background, and that's how the uniforms came from and all that kind of stuff. So um, that had a very specific motif around it. But yeah, the overall approach, even in the animation, let's don't forget, we should mention that as well. Has that same pink and white look. The only version that's a little bit different, actually, well, I'd say it's very different, both from a color scheme and design, is the Bendis Legion from Ryan Sook, who designed a very different Saturn Girl costume, much more red than pink from the design on the costume, and it's just a very, very different look based on the other editions.
Let me ask this, and this is sort of the last one to talk about, because we like to talk about where the Legion is going. Now, I know they're not being published, and there isn't a book, and fingers crossed we're going to get some good news sooner than later. But if you were running DC Comics and they said, "Okay, we're going to bring the Legion back. How do we handle Saturn Girl?" What would be your advice, or where would you want them to take her?
I really like, and this might sound like a little bit of a cop out because it's kind of going backwards to some extent. But I would love to have her. I want to see the good parts of her character again, right? Where she's the strong female leader. She can handle her family, and she can handle running the show and defeating the bad guys. Have that really strong central female leader again. I think that would be what I would love to see from this, and honestly, in any incarnation of the Legion, because she is, at the end of the day, she's really one of my favorite characters, kind of all up, just because of her core strength, right? I was joking about the bikini outfit before, but at the end of the day, I mean, I really appreciate the fact that she's this strong female that can get things done. That's what I would much prefer to see, how they handle her moving forward. Now, from an alternate reality perspective, like as we're recording this, right, we're in the midst of the DC All In stuff, and there was a hint of an evil Legion. So I'd be kind of interested to see how they might play that, because we've seen her opposite, her evil counterpart in Saturn Queen a few times. But I think that would be an interesting thing to explore, but not as an ongoing. I definitely want to see her back as the calm and collected, focused leader.
Yeah, I'd like to see, and I'm going to pull this. I'm going to pull some X-Men stuff in here because the Legion and the X-Men just kind of naturally vibe. I always sort of see her as like, I'd like to see her written as Cyclops the leader, but as Jean Grey the powers, if that makes any sense. Yeah, if I was doing, like, if I'm writing Legion, or if I'm giving this advice, the first thing is I'd say, like, look, have her as the leader in the beginning and have her laying down the law, but also have her separate from the team, so that you're getting that tension of she's running the show and maybe there's some people who aren't happy with it, and then you can use Lightning Lad as who she can bounce her problems off of, and you can show that relationship as well, because I think that's another key to it. I think you have to have those two because they counter each other, and then show her to be, that strong character who makes the team better and makes everybody work well together. But maybe they don't appreciate what she's doing because she doesn't have the emotional connection.
That's a really good point. Well, let me just jump in here a little bit, because one of the things that we should probably talk about, and you've touched on something I think that's really important about I think the character's past, as well as the character moving forward, on what they should do with her, is the fact that you have there's been several storylines where she is kind of out of control, right? And either is forcibly taking control of somebody else's mind, or more specifically the minds of her teammates or of her allies. Those kind of scenarios don't really make her look to be good. And I think there has to be a good balance between coming up with a good dramatic reason to use that kind of scenario versus actually doing it just because to show that she's powerful, right? Because at the end of the day, she has to be a hero, and you don't invading other people's minds that you're supposed to be friends with is not a really good way of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think of like the long-term storytelling that they could do, which would be it's that baby steps to her becoming a little bit more dangerous with her. And again, like I don't want to just copy the Phoenix storyline because I think that's I mean it's done so perfectly. But I mean, you could start off just planting these very, very small seeds of like they tell her to control somebody's mind, she fights back, she does it, and then I don't even want to say she enjoys it, but like, do the ends justify the means? And then that becomes the conversation as they move forward. And like I always thought with the reboot, when they had her controlling people's minds, and she does it with Cosmic Boy and she does it with Ultra Boy and all of this stuff that she's doing, you made a great point. It lowers the character a little bit because she ends up being a villain, but she never faced any consequences for it, but also it never looked like she was hesitating before she did it. And those were the two problems. Whereas if she was in a situation where literally had no choice, like she had to, like, like, let's just say she's trying to rescue somebody, they're knocked out. So the easiest solution is she controls their mind and makes them do stuff. Now you're going down this slippery slope, and then you can go with this. And I think you can have a lot of fun with this character. And then when she fixes it, or when she, like, when I'll go back to the reboot, they put all the blocks on her mind before she could do something bad. And I think it would have been far more interesting if she had done something bad and then they'd put the blocks on her mind. Right. So she understood why they were there. And then you could have this thing she's battling against as they're moving forward.
Well, yeah, that's a really great point, because in that first year of the reboot, right, they did have that storyline where she had to essentially invade the not Chameleon Boy, the Chameleon Lord, or I don't think they actually gave him a name, but the Composite Man. That's what it was.
Oh, wasn't it the Composite Man?
Yeah, exactly. And in that one, that had the elements that you're talking about, right? Where she did something, she didn't feel comfortable with the fact that she had to do it, and she had consequences, because then she kind of became a veg for a little bit. She was out of it for a good number of issues until she was, the way they brought her back wasn't their best storytelling, but that's fine. But yeah, that was a great example of you're super powerful. You had to do something you didn't want to do. Here's consequences. Now you got to deal with it. There's so much more they could have done that, and I think those kind of elements, like you're talking about, would be amazing things to explore in a new iteration.
I think this is one of those characters that has been so underutilized for so many years, and there's so much potential with a character like this. Like you can do so much with her, and we've gotten glimpses of it. You get pieces of it here or there, or you get moments where they do things that you go, oh, that's a great way to think of the character. But we haven't had that, like we haven't had those moments because, I mean, again, there's no Legion book right now, but nobody's used her to where they can take her in a long time. And I think that would be the thing, is that if you're moving forward with her, you have to understand, like, this is, this could be your Professor X, or this could be your, actually, I'll just stop there. This could be your Professor X, where this is the person who's running the show, but also has all of these moral implications with the telepathy. And think of everything they've done with him over the years that they could do with her. And they could have a lot of fun. You could get some great stories. And I think this is one of those characters that has so much potential, that I hope whoever takes over the next Legion series, they run with her, because they can turn her into one of the most important characters in DC Comics. I don't think I'm over exaggerating. Like when you look at Legionnaires and you say, like, who are the Legionnaires who could be characters who show up all the time, like the key characters that the writers really care about. And I think she's on that short list of if I'm going through the Legion, or not the Legion, the DC catalog of characters, she's at that top of that list.
100%. 100%.
So it's good. All right. We've rambled on long enough about one of our favorite characters, but that's kind of what makes this fun. And I hope for all the listeners out there, you can see just how important this person is. So I would say this: if you're new to the Legion and you're looking for Saturn Girl stories, you can literally just go through this like Silver Age to end of volume 3, and you're getting a bunch of great stuff. There's some great stories in the post Zero Hour reboot. Like she's showing up all the time, and I think you can have a lot of fun with it. 3-boot, there's some good parts, and there's some parts that are not quite as good, but she's a key member for all of these reboots. And if you're really interested in her and you want to see why we love this character so much, it's not going to take a lot of time. You get through a few stories and you're in. Is there anything that you'd want to like kind of point to? Like we talked about the I keep wanting to say Eclipso, the Universo saga last episode. That's a great one. Pre-Great Darkness saga is some great stuff for her.
Yeah, the stuff around Great Darkness is great, just because that's when you have the whole confrontation with Darkseid and all that. Yeah, that stuff, the before and or the during and after, right? You want to definitely absorb that stuff. The other thing I think that is a great story that should be brought up and mentioned is the story in the V3 Legion. So this is the Levitz era, around issue 50, where they take on the Time Trapper. She Wonder Woman, Saturn Girl is one of 4 Legionnaires that goes to essentially try to kill the Time Trapper because of his killing of Superboy. And again, strong take charge character facing off these otherworldly powerhouses. In this case, not on her own. She has her some core team members around her, but yeah, another great character issue around her.
I think another good one, if you're in a different version, is it Dream Crime, where she faces off against Universo in
from the Legion, from Abnett and Lanning. Yeah, absolutely.
The Legion. Yeah, it's I think it's the last good story, start to finish. I thought it was really well done, and she's front and center, and they do a lot with her character there. That's another good one. I think if you go with those, what do we name 4? That's a great taste. That'll give you a great idea of Saturn Girl.
Yeah, agree.
All right, we're gonna wrap up this week. Just for anybody who's curious about what we're gonna do next week, we're actually gonna keep talking about Saturn Girl because we love talking about Saturn Girl so much. But next episode, we're gonna talk about her relationships, her connections to different Legion characters, who she's. She was married to Lightning Lad for many years. She's been connected to Cosmic Boy, to Ultra Boy, to Superboy. We want to talk about her friendships, and that's kind of been an interesting part of her character because she's always been sort of this ice princess or ice queen who kind of stays away from everybody else. So we're going to get more into sort of how she's connected to the rest of the team and where the characters go with that.
That sounds fantastic. Can't wait to have that discussion. So Jay, as we're finishing out here, where can folks find you?
Great question. So to find me, there's a couple places. So the first one would be if you want to read what I'm writing about the Legion. So I do a reread review column once a week. It is at jmlonglivethelegion.blogspot.com. If you want to find me on Blue Sky, it is jmckiernan.bsky.social, and we'll have all those links up on the podcast. And Jim, where can they find you?
So I also have a Legion Review website, although I'm branching out a little bit as I'm finding Legion adjacent stuff to read and review. And that's at jimboslegion.blogspot.com. And I try to do that once a week. That's not been as successful lately, but I'm going to get back to it. But you can find me personally on Blue Sky at jimbofett.bsky.social. I'm on Reddit at jimbofett87 and on Discord as Jimbo Fett. And we have a Legion fan club Discord as well that you can also join. So if you want to follow the podcast also on Blue Sky, or even get access to the Legion Discord, we're at longlivethelegion.bsky.social, or you can send us an email and tell us what you think, or have any questions or anything like that at longlivethelegion2025@gmail.com.
Perfect. All right. So thank you for listening. We hope you have a great day wherever you are, and we will see you for our next episode.
Long live the Legion.
Long live the Legion.